What do we really know about the criminal justice system, and how does what we know drive policy? We're here to separate some fact from fiction is criminal justice professor John Paitakes from Seton Hall University. Thanks for coming on board and chatting with us, Doctor. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Let's talk about general misconceptions that people may have about the justice system.
Yeah, I mean, generally, people get their information from, let's say, newspapers, and that's usually not, or TV, the complete background. But, for example, once a criminal, always a criminal. That's really not true. Maybe a little bit more than 50% get rearrested, but the other 45% or so make a satisfactory adjustment. They get meaningful jobs and they contribute again. So if we believe in punishment but also rehabilitation, then we have to look more closely at it. So again, people do turn their lives around.
And there seems to be I guess a stereotype in the movies that the criminals never really turn their lives around. There's always some big deal. They're going to go back to a life of crime and some big score. But in fact, a lot of people do re-enter society successfully.
Right, you're right. And again, I mean, TV, part of that is Hollywood, what's going to attract people to watch it. And there's some fascination sometime, with crime or whatever. But I don't think we hear enough about the positive side of it, those who made a positive adjustment to society. And again, a fair number do.
Is there true rehabilitation going on in the prison system, or has it gone to a point where we're just making criminals better criminals?
Well, basically it ends up a lot depending on the individual. There are programs in the prison, counseling programs, behavior modification, anger management. There's also vocational training if you want to, okay? Same thing with education. You can get your GED in prison, and there are some even that offer college courses. But like any type of rehabilitation, the inmate or the person has to buy into it. So we can offer you the courses, but if you don't take them seriously, and again, every prison must have a law library and a regular library, so the tools are there. It's up to the individual. So to answer your question, yes, there can be if the person is motivated.
I wonder how much of that is fueled by private industry. We talked last week about private industry becoming huge in prisons, sometimes supplanting local businesses in some of the products that they make. Fish farming, license plate making,
Right.
boat making, all kinds of things. Is that perhaps fueling more of the job skill training part of this?
Well, many states have what they call state use industry or prison industries, and they will make, like you said, they make all the license plates, they make prison uniforms, they even make furniture, etc. But they really can't sell that in the private sector. The good thing about that is that it teaches the inmates some vocational skills, some marketable skills, that once they get out there, they can get a job if they've learned some vocational things. So that's really the positive thing about it. It's not so much the competition with the private sector, because in most cases, in most states, you can't sell those products other than other correctional institutions.
Okay.
But
That's interesting, because that was one of the things that we talked about, whether there was an undue competition going on between the prison systems. And
years ago, Brian, that was the case. They were competing with the private sector, and the private sector got really agitated by it because they couldn't keep up with, the cost factor that the prisons had so much manpower. But pretty much for the most part, you can only sell it to other government agencies.
Well, let's talk about this moniker we hear, country club prisons. It paints a picture in the mind that, these are guys kicked back, on these federal prisons that are really nothing like the hardcore state prisons. Is that the case?
Well, okay, I've never been aware of any kind of country club type prison. Some are maybe more modernized. If you build a new prison now, it's air conditioned, but it's both for the inmates and the staff or whatever. The country club part, I think, comes, for example, in New Jersey, the military institution, Fort Dix, was cut back on the training, so they had a lot of property. They have a federal institution on the grounds of Fort Dix, New Jersey. There is a golf course there, but it was there for the officers. Now, do some of the inmates use that? Well, perhaps if it's there, same thing with the swimming pool. It was there for the military. Do we use it or not use it? So I think that's where people may get the idea that, oh, this is like a country club, but we don't construct them that way, And again, many times the federal prisoner may not be as dangerous as somebody in a state prison, a lot of white-collar criminals,
Sure.
that type of thing, you know. But the bottom line is they are secure in a certain area, and they can't leave that facility, you know, so you are confined. You know.
Yeah. You use an interesting term, white-collar criminals, and we tend to think of white-collar criminals are those who are less dangerous, but in fact, some of them do more damage to the American economy when you talk about people ripping off consumers. Is that do we give the wrong impression when we use that term?
Well, we may have in the past, but if you notice the criminal justice sentencing in the last couple of years, the white-collar criminals that we still call them are getting more severe sentences. And you're right. I mean, they do impact thousands of people's lives. People lose their jobs, their pensions, their investments, or whatever. So the criminal justice system is taking a stricter stance on them, and you're seeing longer, lengthier sentences for those individuals, you know. And we still do use that, you know, term. It may not be as aggressive and violent, but again, it is affecting a large number of people, and it is a serious crime, you know.
Well, Doctor, interesting stuff. Always good to have a chat, and we'll look forward to having you on again.
Good. Thank you, Brian.